What is the most fricked up thing you did that still haunts you to this day? Bored in the house one day alone when I was about 10, so decided to give my dog a shower. I genuinely loved my dog. He was my best friend growing up, but for some unknown reason I decided to turn the shower on to hot water only, extremely hot, and started showering him. There was a delay I guess in him reacting because his fur was so thick, which meant I kept it on him for a few seconds. Suddenly he started yelping like dogs do when in pain. His instincts were to not be aggressive or try to escape but just looked at me scared and confused. I panic smashed on the cold and cooled him down as quick as I could. Fortunately he was not burnt or had any ongoing issues. He never even lost trust in me. I felt physical sick and ashamed in myself for days after, and obviously it still bothers me 20 years later. The good thing to come from it is that I was so disturbed by my action that I have never knowingly inflicted pain on anyone or anything since. When I was 14, I wrote a note to my dad telling him he shouldn't be smoking and this is why I was taking away his full pack of cigarettes. I was taking them to smoke them. I have never regretted anything more in my life. I want you to know that this is genuinely funny. I'm sure your dad was just pissed off that his retarded little goblin of a child pinched his ciggies. I'd like to think that anyone would find the humor in such a transparent lie, lol. When I was a child I was staying at a relative's house in a foreign to me country. I woke up in the middle of the night really needing to poop. The toilet was in the basement and the house was dark. I had no idea where the light switches were so I found a plastic bag, pooped in it. I panicked and ended up going onto the balcony to clear my head. The only thing I could think of was to throw it as hard as I could. It ended up landing on the neighbor's metal roof. There it sat for the duration of my trip. Still haunts me 20 years later. The Olay Summertime Sizzler. When I was 17 my brother walked into a room where I was lying down on my back and stamped on my chest. I saw red and stood up and punched him square in the face. Unfortunately this was in a doorway in front of a staircase, which he fell down backwards and when he hit the wall at the bottom folded up in such a way I thought I'd killed him. He didn't move for what seemed like forever and I was certain he was dead. The world just spinning out around me. He wasn't dead, obviously, but knocked out briefly and he never laid a finger on me again. After being the kind of nasty bully who had spent much of my childhood just randomly beating on me for his own enjoyment. Those were the longest seconds of my life. Hulk sees this as an absolute win. Easy. When I was 5, I burned my house down. We were living in a small home, me, my sister, mom, dad. I was supposed to be in the bed, but I wanted a toy or something that was under my bed, and I didn't want to wake my parents by turning on my light. So I grabbed my dad's cigarette lighter and lit the flame under my bed. Needless to say it went up like a match. My dad tried to stomp the fire out after I started screaming fire, burning his leg horribly. My room and the source of the fire was blocking every other bedroom from escape, so everyone had to jump out of a window. Funnily enough, I don't remember the world-class butt whipping I must have received for that. I just cringe at the thought that I almost killed all of us being a dumb kid. I imagine a 5-year-old saying oops then igniting the fricking house. In 5th grade a girl told her friend that she liked me. I found out and left a letter on her desk to ask her to the upcoming 5th grade dance. When she found it, she came over and said, "Is this a joke?" Probably because she was bullied a lot. Freaking out, I said, "Yeah, it was a joke." She cried. Ended up going to senior prom with her after reconnecting, though. I don't know about haunts but it makes me cringe. In public school we had this thing in our school called Jumpstart for Kids where you'd go around, often door to door, collecting money for this charity once a year. Anyway I was 12 and I liked a boy in high school and he convinced me to take the envelope and go door to door and collect money to give to him so he could buy a drum set. I walked around collecting from all these sweet people who told me I was so nice for collecting money for underprivileged kids. Fortunately I got caught and my parents made me donate it instead. So embarrassing. Provincial Park. Pay shower. 12 years old. Line up to get in. Towards the end of my turn in the shower. Get the urge to poop. Cannot hold it. Using a sock to smoosh the last of it down the drain. Water turns off. Out of quarters. Put a towel over my head. Run out of there past the lineup. Get back to the campsite. Immediately change clothes. shoes, hairstyle, put on a ball cap, work up the courage to go by the area later on. It is all cordoned off. Hear people angrily discussing how someone took a dump in the shower. They always go back to the scene of the crime. I didn't call my friend back when he left a voicemail. It was a casual message saying hey, and I didn't ignore him for any reason. Just got caught up in life stuff. He killed himself that night. I vowed to never not call someone back again, and that was 13 years ago. That's not your fault. I was married to an insanely abusive man. After 2 years I escaped and he killed himself shortly after. Not sure if it was him avoiding charges or avoiding his deployment, but his family decided it was 100% my fault. They told the police I gave him the gun and encouraged him. That was investigated and unfounded. What they didn't know was he'd scanned and emailed me his suicide note the wee hours of the morning of. The police didn't find the note. Of course I handed it over when they asked. His family would not believe I wasn't involved or at fault and harassed me for a long time. If I got a job and they found out about it, they'd call and leave so many complaints I'd get let go. Found out what I drove and had their other kids and their friends follow me. I ended up having to leave that town and disappearing to avoid them. But before I did, I printed a copy of his suicide note, found his mom's car at a job, and left it on the window shield. That note detailed the abuse his father put him through, his rage at his mother for never leaving him and making himself and his siblings live with the sob, that he never wanted me to blame myself, that this was his way of getting the heck away from them and the damage he caused. I felt pretty bad for a while, but at the same time, they literally wouldn't leave me alone and stalked me for 5 years. You had every right to do that. We moved to a new house when I was 8. When an old friend called to ask if we could play together, I said sorry, I'm too busy playing with my new friends. I threw a huge rock on my friend's head. He bled through his beanie, and when we got into the air they said it was about 1 centimeter from a killing blow. We are still great friends today 15 years after, but man, could I've made a huge mistake. I didn't know it was fricked up at the time because I was maybe 5, but I somehow still remember it. So you know the carnival horses you can sit on outside of grocery stores, back in the 90s. Well, I wanted to ride one and this sweet old woman tried to help me get on, slipped, and really hurt herself falling into the ride. I just remember hearing her scream and I got scared and ran away. I'm 31 years old and think about that day at least once a week. We had a camper in this large campground at a lake when I was growing up. Tons of families with kids riding bicycles and golf carts up and down the gravel roads through the property. There was this one kid that was a few years older than me. I was 10, he was probably 12 or so, whose dad was the security guard and they lived on site, and he was the biggest punk in the park. He'd try and wrestle you in the pool, throw rocks at you as you were fishing, ride off on your bike if you left it laying around, bully and hit smaller kids, even girls. I was driving the golf cart down a pretty steep gravel hill one day when I came up on him on his bike, going the same way as me. He never turned around to acknowledge I was there, so I got up just to the side of him and turned hard right into him. We were both going probably 10-15 miles an hour down this hill. He took a nasty spill and rolled off the side of the road and wasn't moving. I kept on going, acting like nothing happened. We were completely isolated, so no one saw me. I remember him getting taken away in an ambulance and hearing that he'd been hurt pretty bad. I immediately felt remorse for what I'd done but never said a word to anyone. He or anyone else never had any idea I did it either. I look back now and think about how much of a financial strain I put on that family, seeing as how they were already living in a camper. That was a really evil thing I did, and it still crosses my mind quite often. This random stranger grants you forgiveness. Just don't do it again. Pretty please. 2nd grade, I had a classmate, fake name Sasha, who was kinda awkward. Crooked teeth, quiet, not too bright, didn't really have any friends within the class, though she did have some people she would hang out with at recess. In any case, a boy in the grade above us, a friend of my brother's actually, for some reason decided to spread a rumor among all of us that Sasha had license to stay away from her. I bought it without a second thought, and so did most of us. As far as I know, she wasn't particularly teased, but she was just shunned. No one talked to her. She was around till the end of the year and didn't come back for 3rd grade. No clue what happened to her, but I really hope we didn't mess her up too much. Next summer, I got the worst case of head lice my pediatrician had ever seen. Karma, my dudes. My husband and I bought a house and lived across the street from a really nice old man who was probably in his mid-80s. We had just moved in and only chatted with him a few times, but it sounded like he lived alone and had adult children nearby who checked in on him regularly. He was pretty independent and walked every day and did lots of stuff around his house. One day my husband and I were leaving and looked across the street to see our neighbor using his push mower to mow the grass. He was hanging onto the mower for balance and looked pretty wobbly. We had to meet a friend to pick up some mulch or something for our yard, which wasn't going to take long, but both said, "Oh man, let's go over and finish cutting his grass when we get back." We ran down the street and were probably gone less than 15 minutes. As we returned, we could see up ahead a fire truck and ambulance and several police cars. In the 15 minutes we were gone, he had fallen and hurt himself, breaking his hip. He never came back to that house again. He left and went to a hospital, then a nursing home, then died. I think about it often and wish that we had just stopped to go over and mow his grass. He probably would have told us he didn't need help, but I can't help but wonder if he maybe would have said, "Yeah, thanks for the help. I won't ever hesitate to help someone again." I was at school and for no reason at all, I eavesdropped a very private and delicate conversation between one of my teachers and her husband. Then she opened the door and saw me eavesdropping. It was beyond humiliating and I deserved a scolding afterwards. I was young and stupid obviously, but when I remember the look on her face, I still cringe hard, even if it's been almost 20 years. Had a babysitter who was a kind middle-aged woman with no kids of her own. Her only fault was that she kept referring to herself in the third person. One day 8-year-old me snapped and told her to shut the heck up. She cried. I still feel bad about it 25 years later. Sometimes people need to hear the truth from the mouth of a child, lol. When I was around 11 or 12 I started sleeping in bed with my dad. My mum was in the same room but she slept in a separate bed. My dad was a twitcher and would violently thrash around so she moved to another bed. Anyway, I started sleeping in bed with him and one night I woke up to my dad rubbing and playing with my nipple. He was essentially feeling me up and I could tell he was turned on. I had no idea what to do. I didn't want to say anything because I thought if he was doing it on purpose to me he might hurt me. If he was doing it because he thought I was my mum then we'd both be really embarrassed. And if he was just doing it in sleep I didn't want to make things awkward. After a few minutes he stopped and we just lay there and he tried to draw his hand away but I stopped him and tried to get him to keep going. I have no idea why. The next morning my dad obviously told my mum what had happened and she said, "Your dad touched you last night because he thought it was me." I tried to deny it happened because I was embarrassed but eventually said that yes he had. Then my dad came in and apologized to me. It was such a weird awkward encounter and I never slept in the same bed as him again. A few years ago, my attractive neighbor was in my apartment with me. She was extremely forward with things and even told me she was into S&M type stuff at some point. I thought she was into me at that point. We've been flirting for months. Well, she was looking around my apartment and bent over. She was just swaying her butt from side to side like she was being playful. I gave her a quick spank. I could not have misread that situation any worse. She was just trying to pick something off the low cabinet shelf. I'm still disgusted with myself even though I apologized. She said she was even more surprised because she thought I was gay. Ouch. Probably around 12 years old, was rollerblading with my friend in the park. Came across a picnic set up with happy birthday streamers and balloons. No one was there so we assumed it was over and they had left it. We proceeded to tear most of it down. As we were about to leave a mother and her kid walk up and ask what happened. We lied and said someone else did it then took off. Have felt absolutely terrible since. Totally ruined that kid's birthday. Gotta love the teenager first instinct to just destroy crap, lol. I was in a friend triangle in middle school where a girl I became friends with was super jealous. She manipulated me into writing absolutely vile and harassing, hate-filled notes to my other friend to prove my loyalty to her. Honestly, it was absolutely vile and wrong of me to do, and I can't believe I was weak and gullible enough to do it. My psychotic depressive episode 5 years ago where I drank laundry detergent. drank my own pee, assaulted a hospital worker and got restrained, bashed my head against a toilet in an attempt to break my skull, all while thinking I was completely normal and sane and didn't need to be in the psych ward and the doctors were going to kick me out on the streets any day once they realized I was actually not sick. Psychotic depression is absolute heck and I am so appalled at my behavior. It's not like you black out and forget what happens. I have to live with what I did every day. I'm only now just beginning to feel stable again. Smacked my stepsister across the face when I was watching her. She was 5, I was 17. I felt so bad afterwards and just profusely apologized. I was raised being abused and the power I felt when I did that scared me to death. I have a child now and have never raised my hand to her. I had to break that cycle before it destroyed me. When I was like 6 or 7 I was at this big slide at the park hanging out with a bunch of other kids from the neighborhood. There was this really big, not older, just big, fat kid near the slide. Whenever a kid tried to go down the slide, he would shove the crap out of them and make them fall off. None of the other kids wanted to stand up to this bully, so they didn't slide down. I went to the slide and tried to slide down, but this kid shoved me off. I went up again, told him not to do that, and tried to go down again. He shoved me again. I got mad. For the 3rd time, I went up there and pretended like I was about to go down. When he reached to shove me, I grabbed him, threw him on the ground, punched him in the face, and started choking the crap out of him. This kid was mortified. While I was choking him I whispered in his ear, "Stop shoving me," and then let him go. He went running off crying to his mom. I felt good for standing up to this bully. His mom went to my mom and my mom set me aside. She said, "He's different than you. He doesn't understand what he is doing is wrong." I said, "How does he not know pushing other people is wrong?" I told him to stop. She said, "One day you'll understand." I do now. This kid had Down syndrome. I choked a kid with Down syndrome. Yes, but the boy could have injured another kid doing what he was doing. His mother was not watching him closely enough if he pushed multiple kids off the slide. When I worked at a movie theater I would sometimes top off regular Coke with Diet because a little bit of Diet would eliminate the overabundance of fizz and allow me to finish filling the cup faster instead of waiting for the fizz suds to dissipate. Down. Better than topping off Diet Coke with regular Coke. When I was in school I used my deodorant in the bathroom to write a nasty message about a girl. I was jealous of her. She was pretty, nice, loved by everyone. I remember her finding out about it and asking why someone would do that because she was nice to everyone. Told my brother he couldn't have one of my donuts. Didn't realize it'd be the last time I talked to him. He killed himself. Wouldn't be so bad if that wasn't the first thing I had said to him in 5 years. When I was in college there was this girl my roommate was friends with. I didn't know her very well, but I did know she was a total pothead. I didn't take any issue with this, but I was very adamant that she not smoke in my dorm room as I didn't want to risk expulsion. Well anyway, one day I came home from class and she was talking with my roommate, and she had the reddest eyes I've ever seen. Her voice is off and she's talking really slowly, and I'm mad. I'm in the middle of this speech about how I only had one rule and she couldn't even respect that. And then my roommate tells me that she isn't high. She had just finished crying because it was the anniversary of her mom's death. Oh man, that must have been awkward. I ran over a little kid with my bicycle and he started crying. I was about 8. He looked pretty hurt but I was scared because his parents were running over, so I pedaled away fast because I was scared. I still feel really bad. Maybe it isn't all that fricked up but it still haunts me. In 1983 I became convinced my fiancée had met another guy and was going to dump me. I loved her dearly, but rather than talk to her about it I decided to go ahead and call everything off myself. She wouldn't have to do it. I'd be in control and not get dumped. I immediately started seeing someone else to ease the pain and never saw my ex-fiancée again. But I thought about her all the time. I would run into her parents from time to time around town, and about 10 years later I was talking to her mom when her mom made a comment that made me realize that there never had been another guy. I had just broken up with her out of the blue and she had no idea why. I remember her crying when we split up, but I thought she was just sad at it ending but relieved that she didn't have to tell me. I still sometimes start my day listening to Randy Travis sing 1982 while I look at our old pictures. She has a great life with a wonderful family. I have a great life with a wonderful family, but I always wonder what would have been. Whoa, I am just, that made me sad. This is a bit late of a response, so it will probably get lost in the comments, but as a kid I had a lemonade stand. My street is not sketchy, but it is close to downtown and between two bigger streets, so there will occasionally be some homeless people passing through. We were probably charging somewhere between $0.50 to $1 per cup, and a homeless guy came up, saying he wanted to support because he had had a lemonade stand as a kid. He handed me the change from his pocket, and for some reason I put it all in my jar. It was obviously so much more than we were charging, and I gave this homeless man no change. But the crappy thing is that even though I was young, I knew it. He just kind of looked at me for a minute but didn't say anything. And I think that was literally all of the money he had to his name. It's probably been 15 plus years and I still hate myself for the time I stole all of a homeless man's money as a kid. Egged a kid's house with my friends in high school. About 12 dozen eggs. It haunts me so hard that if I actually remembered who it was and how to locate them, I'd send them a check. That's the equivalent of 6 ostrich eggs. Was in the cab of my dad's Scania truck. He often used to let me ride along, driving at night. Must have been around 1-2 am. We're driving along at around 45 miles per hour on a pretty straight stretch of road. Couldn't see anything in front of us apart from the tarmac being lit up a small distance ahead by the headlights. We saw headlights approaching us in the opposite direction for the first time in what must have been an hour. I jokingly said, haha, finally another human. Then as it got within like 50 meters of passing us, a figure, probably a person, runs out in front of us and lays down horizontally in the middle of the road. Now, note that the other car is approaching fast. Because of this, we could not swerve into the other lane to avoid it, and it was too late to stop, even though my dad had started braking. And to our right were hedges directly beside the road, so we couldn't swerve off the road either. My dad is now blaring the air horn and whispering, crap crap crap, get out the f-king road, and I just told him, Dad, there's nothing we can do. Just drive. And a few seconds after I said that, we both felt the truck drive straight over it. I told me dad we had to stop and see if he's still alive. There was no chance. But he told me that he had heard things like this from his friend who is also a trucker. Apparently, vehicle robberies are often planned like this. Person lies in road. Vehicle stops. Gang pops out and hijacks vehicle. It wasn't my fault, but I still have a bit of guilt in the back of my mind that I was the reason why that person was dead. Because I told my dad to just keep driving. Although he was going to do that anyway. Because what else could one have done in that situation? I will never forget that bump I felt as we ran them over. Note, we did call the police about the incident. My father was not charged with anything since we had a dashcam recording the whole thing. TLDR. Ran a person over because there was nothing else we could do. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.